Now that my fit is here, it is literally February 1st. I've been looking forward to February to start this vlog. I'm going to be participating in BLACKATHon for 2023, and I'm very excited about it. For some reason, I've been feeling like mild anxiety and just, I don't know, lack of ground, lack of stability around building my TBR for this video. So I still don't have it yet. I know that I'm in the mood to read some Black love and some Black romances for this year's BLACKATHon, but I also would like to read like a classic, maybe like a Toni Morrison or an Octavia E. Butler. I'm in the mood for like either gut-wrenching classic Black literature or Black love in a YA or an adult contemporary form. I don't know. Let's review the prompts, see what we can come up with, and then we'll go from there. So progress has been made. I've decided to join Team Granny Nanny. The first prompt is to choose a book with a charming protagonist who is spiritual or has fantastical abilities. I have two books for this prompt because I'm not sure which one I want to read the most. I definitely want to try them both. The first is going to be Transcendent Kingdom, and then the second book will be Parable of the Sower. I don't know which I want to read. I don't own physically or even like digitally either book, and so it probably will come down to which book I'm able to get my hands on easier, either from my library or from my Libby, or maybe going to the store and grabbing a copy, because I also feel like bookish shopping, so why not? Those are our two choices for the first prompt. The second prompt is to choose a book with a protagonist that is either mixed race or an immigrant, and I have two options for this one as well. I'm either going to choose The Sweetest Remedy, which is a mixed race protagonist going to her father's homeland of Nigeria, or I'll be reading On Rotation, which is a story about an immigrant. That's honestly the one I want to read the most, and so I'm probably gonna go with On Rotation. The third prompt is to read a book set in Jamaica or on an island. I'm thinking of reading Black Cake, which has a few like Jamaican components to it, as well as I think some flashback scenes that goes to Jamaica. And then the last prompt is to choose a book with a set of close-knit friends or unlikely allies, and for that I have chosen Wahala just because I've seen it everywhere. I like the cover, but I don't know enough about the book, and I'm interested. I'm intrigued. While I was putting together this TBR, I realized that Mayana and Deja's Black Romanticathon will be happening the same time that I'm going to be filming this vlog, and so I decided why not merge them, because I think I also want to participate in their readathon as well. Theirs is more of like a bingo setup, which I think is pretty cool. I have a couple of books in mind, and I just got this book in the mail today. It is Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling. It's a YA contemporary Black romance, and I'm looking for literally any reason to pick this up because I definitely want to read this book this month, and it would fit one out of the three prompts needed to get a bingo, so I'll probably find two other books to join. I also know I want to read Real by Kennedy Ryan because it's been sitting on my Kindle forever and it's staring at me and I want to pick it up, so that would literally be a second book. So we'll probably read those two for the bingo, and then I have no idea what we're gonna do for the third bingo, but come along and we'll see. Good morning. I have been in my home nonstop for like maybe a full 2 weeks. I have been fighting depression so bad that even ordering groceries have been exhausting for me, so I'm gonna force myself to get food so I can continue to sit in my house, maybe get my eyebrows done, maybe get my nails done to try to feel better, because sitting in my home is getting to the point where I need to move. So I also need to stop by the library to return some books that I had while working on a different project, so I'm very excited to take those books back. I did listen to about like maybe 45% of Black Cake yesterday, and it was so good. Like, I could not stop myself from listening to that book. I'm gonna have to come back and do a real update. You know what? Let me update you guys from my car. So we start off the book with Benny and Byron finding out that their mother has passed. And Benny and Byron, Byron is he has a successful career, and Benny dropped out of college, and she hasn't spoken to her family in years. Even though the siblings used to be very, very close, they haven't spoken because of a falling out in their family. You get the sense that Benny came out as bisexual to her family, and that they couldn't fathom that, because to them it was just like, you're gonna just sleep around with random people. And I don't know, I feel like I'm not blaming her, but the wording, like, she basically said that she might come home with the girl, or she might come home with the guy. And that to her father was just like, so you're a whore. So it was a big thing, and Benny felt like she wasn't accepted. Byron is upset with Benny for not giving her parents enough time to digest the information that she had shared with them. And it was just a whole thing. So like, no one in the family has spoken. And Byron is even more upset with his sister for not only dropping the bomb on them the way that she did, not giving them time to digest it, but also for never speaking to them again. So there's a lot of just animosity. Benny and Byron find out that their mother has recently passed, and so they come home to try to get their affairs in order, and she has left them this recording of tapes, and there's supposed to be this truth about her life in the tapes, and she has requested specifically that they listen to the tapes together, which is really hard for them to do because they don't really want to like dwell on the past. They don't like, there's just so many unresolved things between the two of them that it's just like, it's a very tense situation. When we start to play the tapes, this book is not similar in any way to The Inheritance of Orchidea Divina, because it doesn't have magical realism, but the sense of a family of descendants coming home after the death of like a family monarch, and finding out that that person, right, mother or grandmother, whatever, had entirely different lives, like literally entirely different lives and identities, and lived in different places. Like they had this huge secret that they never shared with anyone, and they're learning so much that they have to like reconcile together after the death of this person. It is making me feel like how I felt reading that story with Inheritance of Orchidea Divina, and I'm so excited and so like just enraptured with the story, because it doesn't have that magical realism component, but it has a lot of the same structure and like plot devices that I'm finding that I kind of really like. And God, the transitions within the story I find to be utterly amazing. Like, the author is weaving us through so many different perspectives and time periods and lives, and I am so comfortable. I am so content to just hit play and just go through the story. I don't feel any type of like anxiousness or like, I won't say overexcited. Like, I'm excited to read the story, but I feel so comfortable is basically what I'm trying to say. Moving throughout the story and going wherever the author takes me, it's a very content feeling. And so I'm really enjoying that. Also, their mother, Eleanor, she is such an interesting character. I like felt from her from the very beginning. Her talking about growing up on the island, having an Asian father, and just misogyny and how women were expected to react. Her father getting into some trouble with his businesses. He basically decides to just marry her off to settle his debts, and oh God, like that, even that ends explosively, and that's like so early on within the book. And Eleanor is doing whatever she needs to survive, and there is a combination of the world handing her like the worst choices, the shortest end of the stick, with a combination of she seems to have fortuitous luck that helps her get out of extremely sticky situations. We still have so much that we need to untangle about Eleanor's life, but I believe in her as a heroine. I believe in her to put this story on her back and to carry us home, to carry us across the finish line. I'm gonna be honest with you. Although we're learning about Benny and Byron and their relationship, I do hope that they reconcile, but I really don't give a damn about them. I'm here for their mother. I want her to get whatever closure she can from beyond the grave, because she's carried on a lot in her life. But outside of that, I don't know how to explain this aspect, that the book is Black, but it doesn't feel Black. And I love that. It feels like a story that is so utterly relatable, so utterly cultured, that some things don't need to be said. Like, there's an understanding between the author and the readers of the situation. Like, we can easily visualize the situation, and there is no over explanation. And I feel like I've read so many books lately that cater to a wider and wider audience, that they have to explain things that are so simple. So this totally just happened. I was trying to go turn them in, and they collapsed on the floor. Yay to me for getting out of my house. I got so sidetracked today Like, I left my house with the intentions of being productive, and then I got like this frustration being in my car that it was dirty, and then I went on this like hyper focused rage of cleaning out my car, which led to me scrubbing everything in my house and my car, which led to me on the verge of freaking crying, and I don't understand why. And then I just watched the Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which took 3 hours of my time, and then by the time I realized, it was 9 o'clock at night. So I cleaned today. I did really no reading, but that's okay. I have 3 hours to submit my assignment that I have not started yet. So that's what I'm gonna do. And then I'm gonna take a shower and probably try to fix my hair because I'm tired of walking around looking like this. And then we're gonna try again tomorrow, and hopefully our mental health is ready for a better fight. I'm totally in my car again because this seems to be the only place that I can update this vlog. Progress has been made. I am still walking around looking a little crazy, but I did wash my hair and blow it out, which is why I look like a mad woman. But you know, slow baby steps. Eventually I'll do my hair, I'm sure of it. I'm heading to the store because it's almost time for us to move. For those of you who do not know, I'm a military spouse, and so it's almost that very depressing season where it's time to pack up and go. And I have 2 children who have no regard for home training or my security deposit or, you know, just damaging fine things. So I need to buy paint to get God knows what off my walls, carpet cleaning, and just, you know, cleaning my stove and stuff like that, which requires some deep cleaning. I'm trying to make my way through that process as less nerve-wracking as possible, so that's the thing. But in the process of doing that, I can't get like high in my house, like towards the ceilings or the roof, because I'm very short and I don't own a ladder. So we're gonna go grab a ladder from Target. I did finish Black Cake, which I'm debating on my rating for the book, but I'm sitting at 4, maybe 4.5 stars. The book ended up being so much more than like what I anticipated it being. It did so much more than just doing a surface level thought-provoking dive into what it means to be multicultural, and I really love that. And there's a comparison woven throughout the story between Covey having to leave her homeland, and one of the things that she brought with her from the island was this black cake recipe. And there's so many moments throughout her life where she interacts with different people, where she's forced to flee her comfortable space to seek safety and solace and prosperity in another location, and she ends up leaving a little bit of herself behind as well as taking something else with her. And whenever she gets to a new place, she sets down roots, right? And she's influenced by all these different things that are happening in her life, and things begin to sprout in these different places. And it makes you question like how much of this is true to the foundational core of Covey, and how much of this is being influenced by like the different things and people that she's interacting with her lives. I actually find her kids to be something really worth highlighting in the story, because Covey has 3 children. Since Covey herself is the daughter of a half Asian man, she understands what it means to be multicultural in a lot of ways, but that doesn't really protect her from the hardships of life. And her 3 kids, one of them is conceived with a white man, and so that daughter is presenting very white. She looks like Covey in all these different ways, but she's white. And then she has another daughter that's just extremely light skinned. And then she has a son who, for all intents and purposes, appears to just be black presenting throughout the story. And even though they all have Covey for a mother, the way that they present to the world and the way that the world perceives them changes the experiences in their life significantly, but also in so many ways that it doesn't, right? Because there's still some things that being a skin color or presenting a skin color protects you from or doesn't protect you from. And I enjoyed that depiction so much of how a family can share this bedrock, and they can inherit all these different traditional cultures and be connected in so many different ways. But when you mix a multitude of different identities and different communities, how it starts to take a new shape, and the foundational core is still there, the original heritage is still there, but it becomes something else. There's just so much that this book talks about, And I am very glad that I read it, especially for Black History Month, because it shows a different side of the diaspora, and how people really get hung up on diluted bloodlines and like being 100% through and through black, and how sometimes like there really isn't a choice, right? When you're fighting for survival and you're running from home to try to find a new place, you're gonna settle there, and you're gonna grow roots. And yeah, I am really glad that I read this book. I want a physical copy. I want to go back and reread and annotate. If you are someone from the islands, especially because the whole Caribbean is a meld of all these different beautiful cultures that all share this like Afro descendant component to them, but also like just if you're multicultural in any ways, Afro Latina or whatever, I think that this is a book that is a must read for everyone that is a part of a community that they also feel very distant from. So yeah, going to get my nails done, going to get a ladder. Hopefully when I come back to this vlog, I don't look like this. But if I do, it's okay. It's okay. I'm still not mentally there to start my homework. So that's just sitting in the ether. I have one more assignment that I need to do, and I'm hoping that like I don't procrastinate to the end. But part of me just wants to sit on my couch and just read, so that I can pretend like the facade of my life is stable, you know? I totally grabbed some food on my way home because I'm starving, and I came home to some bookish packages. So let's check those out. So I grabbed physical copies of all the books I'll read in this vlog, and maybe some I won't, but got Parable of the Sower, Black Cape, So Happy I Read It, and now I have a physical copy. And then Transcendent Kingdom, as well as Wahala. I'm going to probably eat my food, and I want to start Real by Kennedy Ryan, but that's on my Kindle, so that's probably what my evening's going to be like. I literally just blew through 100 pages of Real by Kennedy Ryan, and it has been fantastic. I am so here for the world building and just the descriptions that are being built around our characters. I'm so intrigued. So we have Cannon, who is a movie director that typically does documentaries, and he has come across this story that he feels he has to tell, of a forgotten African American woman who was a singer and dancer and performer, and he wants to tell her story in a very like dream girls kind of way, in a biopic. And one night his friend takes him to a Broadway show where Neva is having her first like performance on Broadway, and Cannon is like enraptured. He has to have her to play this movie role. And Cannon has some pretty bad experiences dating his actresses in the past, and so he's determined not to ever do that again. So there's some past pain and hurt and just red lines for him, as well as for Neva. We get some background around her. Her high school boyfriend slash fiance slept with her sister and got her sister pregnant, and so she is not really into men and very just focused on her career. And so he's casted her in this movie. They're coming together. They're learning about this woman's life story, and Desi, this is the character that Neva will be playing, is so interesting, and I love it. Like 1940s Harlem, and she's out there in New York on her own, and she's from Alabama, and I just find her to be so intriguing, even though she is not necessarily pivotal to the story. I think that it just gives so much character to the story to still build up Desi, even though like this is just a role that Neva's playing in the movie. This is technically my second book by Kennedy Ryan, and I am quickly coming to learn why everyone loves her and raves about her. I really loved Before I Let Go, but just, you know, I'm here for the Black love and the Black representation and the Black history and movie telling. Like, I usually like stories or movies about performers that are dating like a music artist and a music producer, or an actress and a movie director. I usually enjoy those. I've always seen them like in film, but it's usually depicted in a very toxic manner, like What's Love Got to Do with It or Malcolm and Marie. I don't know, I've just never read it or even watched it as a romance type story. There's always just a heavy amount of toxicity and negative emotional abuse that happens within these stories. And so I'm a little nervous in that aspect, but this feels like the perfect read. I want to just jump back into the story. I'm so patient with their romance. I actually want to see this film come together and play out. I actually want to keep learning more things about Desi as if she's a real person in history. I don't know, but adding in the actual movie scripts in the book really helps me with visuals when they're doing like they're practicing for the screenplay, and just adding real letters from Desi's life is also just adding so much nuance to the story. And the world is so much bigger than Desi and Canon. And I feel like that's going to help me be so much more connected to the story if I can really understand what's at stake between the two of them. But yeah, 100 pages in. I think the book is like 400 pages long, but I'm going to get back to it because I was having a fantastic time. I have a fire going. I'm going to get me some wine, and it's going to be a great night. I spent most of this morning listening to On Rotation, and I believe I'm at about like 35% into the book, so I thought I should come and share my thoughts. The book starts off with Angela. She is a Ghanaian American. She's an immigrant, and of course there is high expectations from her family, particularly her parents, on how they think that her career and her life should play out. They're very adamant about her finding a very well-to-do doctor or lawyer spouse while attending medical school herself, and they have a clear visual for how they want her life to go. And it's really not going that way for Angela. She had a lawyer boyfriend when the book starts off, but then he ends up breaking up with her when it's time for him to meet her parents. And she is excited to be kicking off her residency for medical school, but the test that she's supposed to take for her placement, she pretty much bombs it, and so she's having a hard time just coming to terms with the fact that she did not score as high as she wanted on this test. And yeah, her life is spiraling, and so she's keeping those kind of things away from her parents because she doesn't want to deal with their disappointment. The male love interest in this book is Hispanic, and he is an artist, so he's a contradiction to a lot of the things that her parents wanted to see in the person that they want their daughter to be with. There's a moment in the beginning of the story where they have kind of like an insta love interaction with each other. They spend majority of a day together, and towards the end of their outing, Angela finds out that he actually has a girlfriend and that he has spent majority of this day wooing her and sweeping her off her feet, only to come to find out that he's not even single. And so she has this assumption that he cheated on his girlfriend, and so she's like over him. Of course, they keep running into each other, and the interactions have very much been hostile between the both of them, or mostly just on Angela's side, because she feels like he led her on and like kind of played her from that first meeting. I think that as a contemporary or like literary fiction story, I think it's pretty solid. I think it's interesting enough. Angela's compelling enough. She has enough family dynamics that warrants intrigue from the reader throughout the book, but I don't really like this book as a romance. I'm not interested in the romance at all, and I honestly could do without that component to the story. And the fact that it feels more contemporary or literary than it does feel like a romance, it's really taken me out, because like I'm forced to measure the book by what it's supposed to be doing, and it's supposed to be telling a romance, and I don't care for it. I'm not sold on it. I am going to finish. It's not like bad enough to where I want a DNF, but I think that just like with 7 Days in June, which I don't understand why this book was dubbed for fans of Grey's Anatomy and 7 Days in June, because this book shares very little in common with 7 Days in June, but I definitely feel like in 7 Days in June, the romance dynamic between the love interest was very much center page in a way that the romance in this book feels very sidetracked. I am going to really try to put a dent in this last assignment that has been kicking my butt, because it's due tomorrow, and in my mind, if I can convince myself to do half of it today, then the OCD in me will want to finish it, because I hate having half finished assignment. So like I'm just trying to lie to myself that if I do half, that at the end I'll just stick around and do the whole thing, and then I could just be done. But who knows? That hasn't really been working for me lately. Let's talk about a bookish pet peeve of mine. The problem that I now have with On Rotation is that the male love interest Ricky has reservations and things that he's dealing with in his life that is proving to be a hindrance to their relationship on both ends, but we only get Angie's perspective, and I really don't like that. I don't like a single perspective story and us having to learn about hurdles on the other love interest or in the other love interest life, and us getting no dialogue or deep understanding of that. But now that I'm 50% into the story, we're getting a switch in dynamics where the romance is taking like center place, and it's really hard for me to try to get connected to it when it's set up like this. I need, if both characters are going to have problems and conflicts in their life that are going to directly impact the relationship, then I need to see both ends. I need both angles, because it's just very frustrating for me, because I'm like, okay, well, Angie's gonna resolve this, Angie's putting in the work, and is this person gonna, what are they doing, right? Are they gonna meet her halfway? Are they gonna be ready to go when it's time to go? Like, I can't do this. So let me contemplate if I want to continue with On Rotation, because as a romance, I'm really not enjoying it so far. I'm now 70% into On Rotation, and yeah, I'm going to DNF this book. There's so many things that kind of went downhill with the story that made me disconnect, and in the latter half of the book, we get to a lot of conflicts and of course resolutions. And Angie is 25 years old, and she is a third-year medical student, and a lot of the conflicts felt very childish to me. A lot of her actions, as well as the actions of other characters, felt very immature, and the lack of maturity was used to create conflict. And it feels very young adult and not mid-20s, and that's just not what I'm in the mood for. For some reason, college age romances do not work for me. I can do a really cute, innocent YA where like they're literally sophomores or juniors in high school, or I need full mature adults with, I don't know, a real perspective on the world. Watching someone who is 25 years old act like she's 17 and 18 in situations really just does not work for me. And yeah, I am leaving this book behind because I'm just not having a good time with it. I would still recommend it to other people. I feel like the gripes that I have with the story is very personal. Ultimately, just the romance failed to grasp me. It felt too immature, too childish for the ages that our characters are at, and also just not having that dual POV in a book where both characters have a conflict. It's not working for me. So yeah, I'm DNFing On Rotation, but I am 50% into Real by Kennedy Ryan and still having a fucking fantastic time. I'm literally talking out loud to myself and responding to what's happening in the story, and my husband is like trying to have real conversations with me, and I'm talking to the book. I'm not talking to him. I'm having a great time. I still don't feel so inclined to read her entire backlist, but I am interested in reading more stories by her, maybe some new releases, because I know she has like 2 books coming out this year, so maybe I'll be checking out those. I just finished Real by Kennedy Ryan. Totally 5 out of 5 stars. This story was fantastic. I think that this book was so much more than just a love story. It felt more like a love letter to all forms of love that exist. There was like familiar ties and like sisterly love, sibling love, motherly love, and all of the hardships that come with that. How love can be challenged in a way, how it can be pushed to its boundaries, and how love can evolve and survive. And this story was just, from the beginning, so much larger than just Canon and Neva. And as much as I love them, I think that, one, they are great examples of like maturity love, 2, adults knowing what they want, voicing what they want. Neva was such a strong female main character. Like, she was bold with her sexuality and with her needs, and also just like with her heart. She was vulnerable, but confident at the same time, and like vulnerable but still in control at the same time. And I really just love that depiction. I really liked Neva, and I think that canon matched her stride for stride in like everything, and that was beautiful to see. I do want to mention that with Neva, her journey with lupus felt very intentional. I was not expecting that. I don't think that I've heard people mention that she has lupus, but there is representation for that, and that felt so much more than just a caveat to the story. It brought so much more life to Neva, and just again added to her vulnerability and her quest for satisfaction and contentment, but also just the world building and the character work that Kennedy did in this book is insane, because I was fully immersed within the story. Like, the visuals were there. Again, I mentioned earlier that I loved having the script components for the story that she was telling, and her diving into just the experiences of Black entertainers at that time, and them choosing to go to Europe, choosing to go to Paris or France, and just exist in a space where they are treated as human beings. I feel like Kennedy Ryan was telling two stories simultaneously and like effortlessly at the same time. So as much as I loved Before I Let Go, I would definitely consider that a favorite, but I think that Real just topped it because I enjoyed that book so much more. Definitely gonna grab a physical copy of that one and not just have it on my Kindle, because that is too bomb to not own a copy. Highly recommend. In other news, I'm about halfway through Parable of the Sower, and this is everything that everyone said it was going to be. I underestimated the power of reading classic literature from an author of color, specifically a Black author, because the hill to climb to get invested within the story was very minimized. Like, I was immediately there, enraptured. Her writing is as dope as I thought it was going to be. I can't believe I waited this long to start a book by Octavia E. Butler, but yeah. We're following Lauren, and the year is 2025. She's the daughter of a Baptist pastor or preacher, and the world has pretty much gone to crap. It is chaotic. She's in America, of course, and there really isn't a description of a catastrophic event that led to the decline of society, but it's more of like a degenerative nature. You get the sense that things were going downhill for a while, and just no one was able to stop it or bring it to heel. There are depictions of individuals that kind of still believe in the system, that still believe politicians when they say they're going to try to fix things and to vote for them, but there still is a heavy sentiment that like the political system in America has failed them, and everyone is resorting to their own devices and thieving and robbery and just doing whatever they can to survive. There's a component of massive amounts of drug uses. Some individuals have created these kind of commune or communities, especially the religious ones, because they tend to have become more reclusive in nature, and so they're very siloed, and that is the world in which Lauren is being raised. And she is about 15, I think, when the book starts, and there is this slow awakening and evolution to Lauren's perspective on the world and Lauren's perspective of her religion. She is actively saying that she doesn't believe in her father's God or her father's version of God anymore. But as she's exploring these concepts, it feels to me that she does still believe in her father's God, just not in the way that he does. It's a bit of a contradiction, because she's saying that her God is different, but she's describing a more omnipresent and evolutionary God. And I think that that's like an allegory, because God is evolutionary and revolutionary. And so she's taking these concepts that were fed into her as a child and really owning them herself, really asking questions and challenging them, not challenging the existence of God, but more so the meaning of God. She's also very empathetic, and so she can feel the pain of others. She's been kind of taught to ignore that side of her and kind of like not pay attention to it because it's not very tasteful. There is a great contrast between Lauren and her father, because he is a mature adult that is a believer of God, preacher of God. He brings the gospel to different individuals, and he is increasingly getting to the point where the need for survival, the need to protect his family and his community, is outweighing his moral capacity in a way that Lauren is becoming more morally devout, and more sure of her morality, while her father is losing his moral conviction at the same time. And he's doing things again out of necessity for the environment in which he lives in. And Lauren is changing her perspective on her environment at the same time. And she's doing a lot of these things internally and just struggling to kind of communicate those. She wants to enlighten those around her in a way that makes them feel safe, because she doesn't want to scare them. She understands how vulnerable this concept is, but this epiphany that is happening within her is getting to the point where she can no longer just keep it contained, because she's beginning to prophesize things. And I don't think that Lauren sees herself as a prodigy at all. I think that Lauren is going through a process, whether she wants to or not, and she's creating this religion of her own. I find it very interesting to follow a character that is so much more meaningful in their existence than even they can comprehend, while they're trying to comprehend more. I don't know. This book is worth rereads. I wish that I had annotated this one from the beginning, but I'll definitely go back and reread this. I already planned to do a reread, but yeah, I'm glad that I decided to read this one and not Kindred first, because I feel like this one, something just told me that it was going to speak to me more, and so I'm very grateful for that. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. While it isn't a new favorite, I really enjoyed my reading process of it. There are some really quotable moments and entire paragraphs that could be dissected into a literal class. I am excited to jump into more of her writing. I am impressed, I am satisfied, and I'm also in awe of what Octavia E. Butler has created here, as well as some of the things that she has extrapolated from society and how relevant it is today, because this book was written in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was written in the 90s. Okay, so it looks like this book was published in 1993. So the relevancy from what's in this book to today, considering that we are 2 years away from 2025, I feel like there's so many things that she was on track for. If you're someone that struggles to read classic dystopian stories, I highly recommend Octavia E. Butler, because she doesn't write with a gentle pen, and I really enjoyed that. I'm not a big fan of stories that really beat around the bush, are much more gentle in their storytelling, or really just make me work harder to understand what the writer is trying to convey. It's really just raw and blunt and straightforward, and it's a refreshing experience to read a classic story like that written in that way. So yeah, I'm very excited to be checking out more books by Octavia E. Butler. The second book that I ended up finishing that I ran through in one sitting, so I could not update you guys on, is Reggie and Delilah's Year Falling. I read this for a prompt for the BlackRomanticathon to get to the bingo. This was such an adorable story. We're following Reggie and Delilah. Reggie is a black nerd that loves RPG games like Dungeons and Dragons, and he's really just comfortable with where he is. He knows that the things that he likes isn't very cool or isn't very black, so he's not living out loud in the way that he wants to, because he doesn't feel like he has the space to do so. So he keeps a very close knit of friends. He's very reclusive and just to himself, and just living privately so that he can avoid a lot of the teasing and jokes that comes from his family and friends, especially from his older brother. And Delilah is biracial. She just joined a punk band, and she is now their lead singer. On New Year's Eve is her first time performing with this band, and Reggie is kind of forced out of the house to go, and he ends up seeing her, and he is in love with her and just her confidence. And so he puts on this different persona of just a self-confidence that he doesn't really have at home, because he thinks that that's what he needs to be with a girl like Delilah. And Delilah is attracted to his confidence, and she wants to learn to be as self-assured as he is. And so they are presenting a much more self-confident version of themselves than is actually really true. However, Reggie starts off this relationship kind of misleading Delilah, because he is not this overly self-confident person in his personal life. And so for majority of the book, he is battling how honest to be with Delilah and whether or not she's going to like him for him. What I thought was so interesting about this story is to individuals really battling with their connection to the Black community. Delilah has never really felt welcome wholly into the Black community, but she knows that she's not a part of the white community either. And now that she's joined this band with mostly white bandmates, and she goes to a mostly white school, her band is getting this significant rise in popularity, especially on social media, and she knows that it has something to do with her. And while she wants it to be related to her talent and what she's actually bringing to the band, she can't help but wonder if her diversity card and what she brings to the band for her racial makeup is really what's helping them with their popularity. So she's becoming more self-conscious, and I think that her journey to take back her diversity card was very interesting. I understand what it feels like to exist in a space being the only person of color and being made to feel like this is some type of affirmative action or progressive movement just because of my racial makeup, and not really knowing if you're here because of your own merit and if you're here because of your own talents, or if it's really just boiling down to your skin and just being popular right now, seeing a Black girl do punk. There's also a really cute scene where Delilah interacts with other Black girls that are so excited to see someone within this predominantly white space, and it really helps her with her confidence. I think that as much as I enjoyed Delilah, Reggie definitely stole the show. He was like not as lost in his self-confidence as he thought he was, because as soon as Delilah made a safe space for Reggie to be himself and to really nerd out and talk about his RPGs and hosting Dungeons and Dragons tournaments at his home, he was very open and honest about that. So I think that this is a great example of the many faces that we put on to exist within a space, because we never know how much of us can be tolerated or how much of us can fit within a space. So this is my second Elise Bryant book, but by far my favorite. Highly recommend this book. Their romance was really cute, but I just really loved how they were both able to kind of support one another as they started to love out loud and live out loud and be their authentic selves. I've also managed to start All I've Wanted, All I've Needed. This is a book that's available on Kindle Unlimited. I'm also doing this to hit my third bingo for Black Romanticathon, so I can knock that out. I still have Wahala to read, which is going to be my last book for BLACKATHon. So yeah, literally 2 books left in this vlog and we'll be done. I've had such a great reading experience so far. I'm so glad that I decided to do this and you guys are on this journey with me. So in All I've Wanted, we are following Harlow, who recently broke up with a longtime childhood best friends to lover romance. He is someone that just got signed to the baseball league, and so she has found the last few years of her life being wrapped up in his career and what he wants, and she basically didn't have the space to have her own identity. There is a bit of a obsessive ex-boyfriend trope, because he believes that him and Harlow are pretty much in game and that she's going to get back with him. But in a quest to find herself again, Harlow actually travels to Bali and she becomes a yoga instructor. When she's there, she actually gets a job offer to move from Texas to Seattle to be a yoga instructor. She's there, she's building this individual identity and life of her own. She's making new friends and really just helping herself get over this breakup when she meets Asin. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's A-C-Y-N. I could be saying it wrong, but Asin is this 25-year-old tattoo artist who owns about 3 different tattoo shops. He's a little rude, and so their initial conversations are pretty much just like sarcastic banter between the two of them. So far, I'm 40% within the book. It's very short, like it's going by so quickly. But while the beginning of this book was pretty rocky, I do wish that we had like a different introduction to the story. It took us a while to get to where we would meet Asin. When he comes into the story and we start to get this dual POV, the book gets so much better. I was a little nervous that I was gonna have to DNF it because I was not feeling the beginning. Yeah, so here's to me having patience and not immediately dumping a book when it fails to hook me in the beginning, because I really enjoy their sarcastic remarks going back and forth with one another, and I'm interested to see where this romance is gonna go. Anyways, I'll be back to update you guys on when I'm done with All I've Ever Wanted, as well as how Wahala is going. I have read half of Wahala, and hell no, this book is going to be a DNF. I don't know what happened, but everything in the book went off course. I had to check the back of the book several times to make sure that the author wasn't just a plain white woman, because Wow. We start the book with three women that have been friends pretty much since like childhood and college. They are mixed biracial, they're Anglo-Nigerian. And then we have this fourth person that enters into this friendship. Her name is Isabel, and she is half Russian, half Nigerian. And you could tell immediately that she is there to shake up the group, to cause some cracks in the friendship, and basically just to sow discord and chaos. The book reads like a very upper class domestic fiction. This could have been like a domestic thriller, if I'm being honest, because clearly Isabel is here to get revenge on something, and so I kind of feel like the book should have been shifted in the way that it was written, because it may be a better read, especially because the writing is there. I feel like the book would be more compelling if it was like a Leanne, why do you say her last name? Moriarty. I could be saying her name wrong, but it reads very much like that, except these are biracial women. A lot of them have grown up in Nigeria. They live in London currently. This has blatant racism and colorism and just stereotypes. There are so many moments in this book that are flat out offensive to Nigerian people, like flat out offensive, that I'm taken aback that it was actually written. They have a clear preference for their proximity to whiteness. There is a lot of biracial supremacy. There are explicit moments of just prejudice and like degrading commentary towards Nigerian culture. There's one character that is dating a Nigerian man, and her friends explicitly state their distaste for that, how she has a crappy taste in men. Nigerian men are dodgy and they don't commit. And there is literally a sentence where her best friend tells her that she needs to get a white man, or at least someone who's not Nigerian, so that she can be treated appropriately. And to make it worse, I don't understand why the author is putting so many of these moments within the story, because it's like almost every other page there are explicit like divergence from the plot where we talk about colorism. There's another character that gets a weave in the story, and she compares it to having lice. She talks about the weave in such a negative way, but then she goes to work, she lets someone kind of play on her hair and touch it, and it's a white woman who says, oh, like, do you think that I could get a weave? And the character says, oh no, it's a black thing. And then she's like, oh, this is the first time in my life I've ever felt black, like I like it. And it's just like 2 pages ago you were comparing your weave to having lice, and the character is like walking around beating her head or like patting her head after getting the weave. It's just, there are so many moments of just overt colorism and prejudice towards their own community. Like they feel superior for not just being white, like they like being like a spicy white, but none of them are tied into their Nigerian culture except for the food. There are pretty cool descriptions of food within the story that really come to life off the page, but outside of like the food, and even that, there's one character that really loves Nigerian food, but she won't really eat it or divulge into it in front of her friends because they're all skinny and she doesn't want to seem fat, and so like she only like really goes in on her Nigerian food when she's not around them. And it doesn't feel like this is serving any purpose. Like I don't feel like the author is going to write in some type of like epiphany or, you know, call to action for the characters or any type of reckoning for their perceptions and views on the world, and that is really bothering me. I can't, like, it's killing my vibe. It's killing my vibe. That's not what I went into here for. Like, I think if you want to read a story like that with just suburban upper class mess, and like mess for the sake of mess from characters that are non-white, sure, but I honestly feel like you would have a better time reading the standard ones because there's a lot less racism over there. I honestly just had to keep checking this book to make sure that the author was Nigerian. I really did. Like, even if you are trying to showcase the clear problems within your community, like, do that. Like, write it in a way where it is depicted wrong. Like, there's a clear line in the sand and you're showcasing a negative about your community, something that needs to be resolved, but it doesn't feel like that is what the author is doing at all. Particularly because I went to go look up the author herself and her backstory. Her dropping out of medical school, moving to London, and then being pretty successful is identical. Like, it's the exact same backstory of one of the most racist characters within the book, which is a little odd. Why would you give the most problematic and like blatantly racist character your backstory? That's weird. That's not That's not what I need on my Black History Month. I was having a fantastic time and I'm done with this. This is a DNF. I'm gonna get rid of this book. I just got it and it's sad, but I'm gonna get rid of this book. And yeah, that's my review of that. I have officially finished All I've Wanted, All I've Needed. Like I said earlier, this book had a pretty rocky start, but I do think that the author investment and the build up into the story as we continued on got stronger. And so I do think that everything except the beginning part of this book, it's pretty solid. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. One thing that was really kind of irking me about the story is there is this obsessive ex-boyfriend, and as much as I felt like the author was really trying to paint him as a villain, he just really didn't seem that way. Like, he was very vocal and adamant about what he wanted and how he really wanted to be with her. And Harlow, for the most part, felt like she really just couldn't be herself and that she would be swallowed whole in a relationship with him. But I don't think at any point it was expressed that she actually tried to tell him that. Like, she just got so frustrated that she left. And there's supposed to be this assumption that even if she tried to explain to him why she doesn't want to be with him, that he wouldn't understand it or he wouldn't take her true thoughts and feelings into consideration. However, she never really attempted to do that. I also don't like the obsessive ex-boyfriend trope. I feel like he was repeatedly brought into the story more times than what was warranted and what was necessary. I get the character growth and helping her get over her relationship with him, her still having feelings for him. He just felt like he was too tangential to the plot and like mostly irrelevant, and it got to the point where I was just tired of him showing up. I don't know, I feel like I wanted to see a little more complexity in that situation, especially for him to be repeatedly brought into the story as this jealous, overzealous ex-boyfriend. Overall, participating in both of these readathons was so much fun. I am grateful that there are things like this to participate in because I don't think that I've ever really participated in a readathon before. This is definitely like my first vlog following prompts and things like that. So overall, it was fun. I enjoyed majority of the books that I read so far in this vlog. I only had to DNF 2 of them, and the lowest rated book was All I've Wanted, which I gave 3 stars. So thank you guys. I hope that you are out there enjoying your Black History Month and whatever way you see fit. I'm gonna get back to my regular scheduled TBR because I took a hell of a detour on this vlog. Anyways, thank you guys for watching my video and I will see you in the next one.